I always knew something was off about Mr. Ralph. He lived alone in the corner house next to mine, barely spoke, and never turned on his lights. His windows were always shut tight, even in the hottest Karachi nights. But the strangest thing? Every evening, around midnight, I'd hear faint scraping sounds, like something being dragged across cement from his basement. I chalked it up to old age quirks, until one night, curiosity got the better of me. It started when my dog, Buzo, went missing. He was a loud, energetic German shepherd who never wandered far. I searched for hours, calling his name in the streets, asking neighbors. Nothing. Then, around 1 a.m., I heard a low whimpering sound from somewhere nearby. I leaned out my window. It was coming from Mr. Ralph's basement. I stood frozen for a moment, heart pounding. My room was dark, the street quieter than ever. I watched his house. No movement, no lights, just the same thick silence. The next day, I approached him. He opened the door barely an inch, just enough for me to see his sunken eyes and nicotine-stained fingers gripping the frame. "Have you seen my dog?" I asked, trying to sound casual. He stared for a long second. "No dogs here," he muttered, then shut the door. But I knew I heard Buzo. That night, I stayed up. At 12:43 a.m., I saw his basement light flicker on. From my upstairs window, I had a clear view of the small basement window of his house. A dark shape moved inside, slow, jerky. Then the scraping began again. I couldn't sleep. I decided I'd go over there the next night. Not during the day. At night, when he was in the basement, when I could see what he was doing. The next evening, I waited until 1 a.m., dressed in black, crept out of my house, and climbed the boundary wall separating our homes. His backyard smelled of rotting leaves and burnt rubber. I crept toward the side of the house where the basement window sat low and cracked. I knelt, peered inside, and stopped breathing. The basement was dim, lit by a single hanging bulb. Chains hung from the wall. A wooden table stained dark. But what froze me was the cage in the corner. Small, rusted, and inside it was Buzo. Weak, thin, alive. But I wasn't alone. A second later, something moved in the shadows. Mr. Ralph stepped into view, shirtless, his torso covered in scratches and old scars. He held a hacksaw in one hand and a large plastic bag in the other. From it, he pulled out something limp, human-like. I gasped. His head snapped toward the window. Our eyes locked. I ran. My foot caught a broken tile, and I fell hard on the stone pavement, scraping my hands and twisting my ankle. Pain exploded through me, but adrenaline took over. I leapt over the wall, barely managing to get inside my own house. I locked every door and window, heart thudding so loud I thought I'd pass out. I called the police, but by the time they arrived, the basement was clean, spotless. No table, no chains, no dog, and no Mr. Ralph. They didn't believe me. Said I was imagining things, that maybe the dog had run away and I was under stress. But they were wrong. 2 days later, I received a small brown package on my doorstep. No name, no return address. Inside was Buzo's collar, torn and bloodstained. I threw up in the sink. I didn't leave my room for a day. Kept the lights on. Slept with a kitchen knife under my pillow. I told my family. They tried to comfort me, but I saw it in their eyes. They thought I was losing it. 3 days later, Mr. Ralph came back. Just walked back into his house in broad daylight. I watched from behind the curtains, heart pounding. He was clean-shaven, smiling, carrying groceries. The police wouldn't reopen the case without proof. So I did something stupid. Again. That night, I snuck into his backyard with my phone. I planned to record everything. I crept to the basement window. The light was on. I raised my phone to start recording, but then I heard a sound I'll never forget. A child's voice, whimpering, saying, "Please, I don't want to go back in the wall." My spine turned to ice, and then I saw it. A loose section of the basement wall. A false panel. Mr. Ralph stepped forward and opened it like a door. Behind it, a narrow chamber lined with insulation and blankets. And inside, a small, pale boy, his wrists chained, eyes hollow. That's when my phone slipped from my fingers. The clatter was deafening. I ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was home, doors bolted, calling the cops again. This time they came fast, and this time they found it. The hidden chamber, the chains, bloodstains, and 2 more sets of clothes buried in a box under the stairs. One of them, a school uniform, reported missing last year. Mr. Ralph had been kidnapping street kids for years. The boy I saw survived. Buzo didn't. I moved 3 months later, and Rever returned. I first noticed the smell on a rainy Thursday morning. It was faint at first, like damp wood and something vaguely sour. It came from the hallway, just outside flat 6B, my new neighbor's place. I lived in 6A, right next to it, on the 3rd floor of a quiet building in Leeds. The previous tenant, Mrs. Langley, had passed away peacefully, I'd heard. The flat stayed empty for weeks, then one day, a man moved in, middle-aged, always wore a navy overcoat, even in warm weather. Thin, pale, and with a slow, dragging walk. I only ever heard him moving late at night. We never spoke, not once. By the following week, the smell had grown stronger, acrid, almost metallic. I brought it up to the landlord when I passed him on the stairwell. Probably just mold, he shrugged. Those old pipes, you know. But it wasn't mold. I know what mold smells like. On Monday night, I was lying in bed when I heard something strange. Not footsteps, not talking, a soft thumping, irregular like someone hitting a wall with their palm, then a dragging noise. It went on for nearly an hour. The next night, I pressed my ear to the thin wall between my bedroom and his. For a while, nothing. Then whispering, low, muffled, repetitive. I couldn't make out words, just a cadence. Over and over again, like someone reciting a prayer, but wrong, off rhythm. I barely slept. I told myself to forget it. Everyone's got their quirks. Maybe he was a religious man. Maybe he talked in his sleep. Maybe the smell was a dead rat. Then came the banging. It was 2:40 a.m., and I was up, reading in bed. Suddenly, 3 hard bangs shook the wall behind me. I jumped to my feet, heart pounding. The kind of panic that doesn't come from a dream. I grabbed my phone, walked to the door, and opened it just a crack. The hallway was dark, silent, still. Then, behind me, scraping. I turned slowly. From beneath my wardrobe, something thin and black was protruding. I inched closer. It was a wire. No, a string. I knelt down and realized it was moving slowly back under the wall, as if being pulled from the other side. That wall led directly into 6B. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning, I went to the building supervisor, told him everything. The smell, the noises, the banging. He looked annoyed but agreed to check 6B. He knocked. No answer. Knocked again. Nothing. Then he pulled out the master key. "Stay back," he muttered. He opened the door. The smell hit me instantly, like meat left out in the sun. I gagged and covered my mouth. He stepped in and immediately turned pale. Oh, bloody hell. I followed, against my better judgment. The living room was empty except for piles of old blankets and a rotting mattress on the floor. Walls covered in strange scribbles, names, dates, and what looked like tally marks etched into the plaster. But it was the kitchen that made me reel. The fridge wasn't plugged in. Inside, stacked carefully on every shelf, were dozens of jars, some filled with what looked like hair, others with dark, dried-up substances. One had a small finger floating in murky liquid. The supervisor called the police. They searched the entire flat, including a locked storage cabinet. When they forced it open, they found what was left of a body, wrapped in tarpaulin, duct tape around the face, wristbound. And then came the disturbing part. The police later told me the body had only been dead for 24 hours. But no one had seen the tenant leave. No CCTV footage. No sign of anyone coming or going. And here's where it turned. They ran the prints. The body wasn't the man who moved in. The man I'd seen for weeks, the one in the navy coat, was never identified. Because whoever he was, he had killed the real tenant weeks ago, assumed his identity, and continued living there. Quietly, patiently. And the worst part, when they dusted the flat, they found hidden holes drilled through the shared wall, into my bedroom, covered by furniture and paper from his side. He'd been watching me sleep. Every night. I moved out that weekend. But some nights, when it's quiet and the lights are low, I wonder what could have happened that night.